Well, good afternoon. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I am joined by somebody that has been in politics, then did something great. You got out of politics to take care of your family. Hopefully got a little sanity in that meantime.
Mm-hmm.
I am joined by George Radonovich, running for Assembly. You are a former congressman.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Assembly district you're running for?
Eric, good to be on your show. The 8th Assembly District includes a huge, almost all of Clovis, parts of northeast Fresno County, and then up the mountains in Fresno County. The eastern half of Madera County, all of Mariposa, Tuolumne, half of Calaveras County, all of Mono County, and all of Inyo County. So it goes to the east side of the Sierras as well.
So you have to drive along, what do you go through, Hecker Pass and or 120, or sometimes you can't even cross.
I'll take Tioga Pass because it's close to
So that's
where I live
120,
in
yeah.
Mariposa, 120, when it's open. And I went to Mule Days last May in Bishop and always wanted to do it and see that the wagon, the mule train. And I had to go all the way down to Tehachapi and up. It was like a 6-hour drive getting over there.
Ooh, yeah.
Finally, Sonora Pass had opened, so I came back that way. But it's a long way over there.
Well, I hate the drive, but I so appreciate the Eastern Sierras.
I can't get enough of it. I tell people I get on 395, just pull over and have a chair and watch the Sierras for all day. I just love the mountains, and it's very nice over there. And so I'll take Tioga Pass because it's a little easier for me. It's a quicker trip from where I live.
And I hope you stop at the Woe Nelly Deli at the mobile station right there by Mono Lake.
It's infamous.
Yes.
You have to.
The breakfast is not that good because the main chef is not there for breakfast. But the lunch and dinner are phenomenal. What a great place to stop on your way to the middle of nowhere. And that's what I love about the Eastern Sierras. There's so little population. You got the giant centers of Bishop and Mammoth. And not much else.
Yeah. But the scenery you get driving down 395 is incomparable, really. And there is a trip that Ronald Reagan took into the mountains during the time that he was governor. And I'm still trying to find out where they camp because that's one of my items that I want to do is go camp in the same spot that Ronald Reagan did when he went into the Sierras.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. So if anybody knows where that is, call me and let me know because.
Well, how would they get a hold of you, George?
They can reach me on my website, which is George202. Excuse me, it's George2024.com, okay. And you can communicate with me through the website. You can also contribute to my campaign and send messages and find out more about why I'm running and what I'd like to do. So,
why did you get out? I kind of know this story, but I think people need to hear this story.
I had served in Congress during the time of the contract with America back in 1994 and won my election by a wide margin. And I served for 16 years and walked away in 2010. I was developing a sense of futility because I had some issues that were taking a long time getting addressed. But then also I had some personal problems with my marriage. My wife had developed ovarian cancer, and we only had one son. We had a number of miscarriages for the longest time and couldn't figure out why, but then we found out. And I felt like it was just the best thing for me to do was to leave Congress and raise my son, because after my wife had passed, he would be basically, in a lot of ways, almost homeless because I would have been gone most of the time. And I love this kid. He's a great kid. He's the only one I was able to have, and so we moved back to Mariposa where he had a better home life, lots of family there, and I think it benefited him well.
So politics is not the most important thing.
No, it wasn't. And I think it's good to walk away, and you in a way you kind of take a step down from life. You're treated differently when you're a congressman, and when you walk away, you're not. And that takes a little adjusting, a little ego adjusting. But I think
that's healthy,
boy,
though.
It was good. Yeah, it really was. Because, it's not you, it's the office. And I think you learn that quickly. and rightfully so. It should be that way. But no, I don't, and I'm not getting back in because I enjoy the benefits of being in office. It's not what motivates me.
So why'd you get back in?
Well, I did. The sense of futility that I developed in Congress was that this I learned something, and that was a kind of a principle that culture's upstream from politics, and that it's hard to affect your politics when with a changing culture. And our culture's been in decline. I think with breakdown of the family and a lot of people less faith in God, I think, in our populace. And it's having an effect on our politics, and it's very difficult to turn that around. During the time that I was out of office, I learned a lot about how to change your culture. And I came across some information that a study that was done that calculated and documented the cost of dysfunctional and broken families. And I think it's a great tool, something that I want to use to replace DEI, which, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which in my view is communist in nature. And I think
and racist, because it sees race first,
Yeah.
and always,
first
and always,
yes. And it's communist in that it seeks equity, not equality.
right. They want the
Big difference
same
in the
results.
Yeah,
Equality means we all have the same starting point, hopefully,
Yeah.
and the same opportunities, but we don't necessarily end up in the same place, because everybody I know that has 2 kids, you only have 1. Or if they have a brother or a sister, do you have the same gifts?
No.
Would you want to end up in the same place?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No.
There's something very anti-American. It abandons the idea of meritocracy.
However, we all want the same chances in life. That's a real thing, and I think that's something that all Americans can kind of gather around that principle. But when you have, and I found through this study that if we can get communities to focus on this issue and of helping all kids do better and helping families be better families, that the outcome for more kids is positive. And it brings, I think, if you bring families together, you bring God into the picture. I don't think you can.
I don't know that that's a given, but the odds are dramatically better.
Correct. You got it. You nailed it. And so with enabling legislation that will be proposing, God willing I get there, will enable communities to come together voluntarily to solve the problem and get help from schools and law enforcement and health departments to help solve this problem. And that's how a free country operates, in my view, to achieve social justice. I think the term is not a good term because it's attached to so many wrong things, but I think we all want to see each other rise in a free country. I know there's a lot of brotherly love out there, and if we're free to take care of ourselves and we're strong, we can help others, and that's what America's all about. But this way, it helps it, and it's a great tool to come at DEI and some of this nonsense that's out there. It solves a lot of the social problems, and it'll be part of a package. Stop me if I'm wandering, Eric, but September 27th this year marks the 30th anniversary of the signing of the contract with America. Oh. And so that's later this week, and I'll be heading back to DC to celebrate it with the freshman class that I was elected with.
Well, that is one of the beacons of hope. That's one of the things that the Republicans got right.
Really got right, yes. And I'm taking a lesson from it. I think that I think it's getting to be high time for California to be presented with a list of, say, 10 things that conservatives will do if the people of California will elect them to the office. And, it includes reversing all this pro-crime legislation, CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, AB 32, the Global Warming Initiative, which is unrealistic and killing the middle class and the poor, and Prop 103, which created the insurance nightmare that we're in.
Not
So,
just us, though. There's other states that have gone down the same wrong path with insurance.
yes.
Essentially, we and a few other states, Florida, interestingly enough, which is generally governed very differently than California, they're having the same type of insurance problems we are.
Well, a large part of it is due to the natural catastrophes that we've experienced, and Florida has as well, don't you think?
I think that's
it's-
part of it, but I think it's also in California's case the natural catastrophes that we set up by not allowing logging roads to be maintained, not
yes.
allowing any logging, with no logging, and then only controlled burns. There's now more trees per acre than there were 100 years ago. So there's more trees and slightly less water.
Yes. Correct.
Well, gee, would you have a problem there?
There's more trees because forest policy created it, let it happen by preventing logging companies from going in and logging the forest. It's really bad forest management policy. And it was not great weather. We did have that drought and the pileup of dead wood. But because of Proposition 103 that was passed clear back in 1998, made California the most heavily regulated insurance industry in America. And all the insurance companies, for that reason, are pulling out of the state.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you've got...
They either pull out or they want more money. And on the high risk stuff, they're just pulling out. Good luck if you live in the mountains
yes,
getting
thank you.
fire insurance.
Yes. If you've got high demand for insurance and low supply because insurers won't do business in the state of California.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the change that needs to be made. And so I do think that something like a contract with America would, modified, presented to Californians in the same way, would give them the incentive to say, I've had enough with voting Democrat or not voting at all. I'm going to start voting for conservatives.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
I mostly hear positive things about you, George. But I talk to a ton of people.
Uh-huh.
I'm at grassroots events. This month I'll be at least 18. And I'm not running for anything. So that's out way more than any sane person.
Yeah.
The one criticism I hear, and I want you to address this, is they talk about what happened with the Friant water.
Right. Yes.
So they don't remember all the details. You remember the details.
Oh.
I know you were put in a difficult situation. What happened?
It wasn't a good spot to be in for the Friant Water District. And forgive me for the dates, but almost 30 years ago, Friant was sued by an environmental group to run salmon down the San Joaquin River, and they lost. Unfortunately, Friant did not do modifying legislation back in the 60s when it was a little easier to do it to prevent this from happening. But the judge ruled in favor of the environmentalists, which would require water running down the San Joaquin River for the fish. And they resisted, between the environmentalists and ag, they resisted coming to a settlement, negotiating a settlement for 18 years. And finally, this judge, environmental judge, Judge Carlton, I know him well, or know of him, the name well, said, you don't make a decision, I'm going to run all the water down the river. And Friant was spooked. So they came to me and said, will you help?
So came to you as in the local congressman.
Yes.
Okay.
Because any settlement was going to have to be in a legislative form. So I said I would help them, and they got together, and both the environmentalists and Friant negotiated a settlement agreement. And they endorsed it. Friant Water District did. So I kept my name to it, and it passed, and it let some water down the river. But truly, if it had not happened, the outcome would have been far worse. And it was one of those rocks between a rock and a hard place that Friant found themselves in.
And Friant Water District approved it.
Friant Water District approved it. Yeah.
Otherwise,
I would have had nothing to do with it. I wouldn't go anywhere near that solution if they didn't ask me for help. Okay. But sometimes you got to make tough calls. And truly, had that decision not happened, I don't like it, but the outcome would have been worse because the judge would have ruled far more severely. And so, to allege that I'm not, that
I'm not. I didn't allege anything.
no, no, no,
I said
no, I'm
just,
not. No, I truly, I know that. But there have been allegations that I'm for not for farmers and water. I am. I fight for it every day. But in this case, Friant lost, and they were in a bad place. And I could have said to hell with the Friant. I'll take political heat for this, and I don't want political heat. But they were in a desperate situation and needed help. So.
what could you do if you were elected assemblyman just generally for farming? I know that not a whole lot of your district, a whole lot of it's mountains. So there's forestry if we'd allow it, and there's some cattle, but there's not a whole lot of farming in your district, is there?
No, but it doesn't mean I
outside of those two things.
I've got so much experience in water and farming and ag issues that for me not to participate and help farmers just because of my district, I think it doesn't.
Well, your district would be the water storage facilities, just not the land that's growing the food.
It's where the water comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot I think that can be done. I think working on a couple of pretty cheap ways to get more water through the Delta is a big thing. There are some storage projects south of the Delta, which is critical. Sites Reservoir's kind of close to south of the Delta.
And it's paid, well, it was paid for in old dollars. I don't know that money would be enough to build it now because they've done nothing.
Well,
but they paid for it, 20 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, and they need to waive CEQA and the environmental regulations, which is overkill legislation on environmental policies. It really is. Waive it and do it. They've waived CEQA. They're remodeling the state capitol up there, the state capitol, and they got so frustrated with the regulations that the legislators waived CEQA to remodel the capitol. You can waive it.
Well, but that couldn't have been the Republicans because the Democrats control everything up in Sacramento.
Well, when it's inconvenient for them, they waive it. And, that can be done to get water storage projects in quicker. And so my agenda, including CEQA reform or repeal, is kind of fits into that idea for water reforms. But I think a lot of it, too, is taking, especially with SGMA and these whiteland issues where people are
so whiteland meaning an area that the only water they get is if they pump it out of the ground or it falls from the sky, right?
Because they're not part of a water district. Yeah, okay. These are farmed lands outside of water districts that took advantage of the wonders of drip irrigation.
Right,
so it's a great thing.
But they have, by not being a water district, in part of a water district, that means there's no irrigation.
They pumped water out of the ground. And with the passage of SGMA, which said we've got to halt the lowering water table, the best way that these whitelands can get water now is if we take excess flows and get them in the water district's water table by flooding farm fields and getting water store projects, underground storage projects, more of those.
Basically, you're saying like a man-made aquifer?
Yes.
Okay.
Get more of that in the ground, and then the more, depending on where the whitelands are, if they're connected to these water districts, or try to move them to the whitelands so that we can get them, allow them to continue farming. I think that's our best bet.
On that note, we'll take our first break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I want to say thank you to everybody that is watching on social media. It's a pleasure to get to meet all these people, get to meet unique people, and to try to spread a message of conservatism and getting back to our founding principles, understanding the Constitution. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I am joined by Assembly District 8 candidate, George Radonovich. Welcome.
Good to be here with you, Eric.
And we were just kind of finishing up a little bit of talking on water. Any other final thoughts with water or ag in general? Because there's also a ton of regulations. There's a lot of ways where I feel like we're getting in the way of farmers.
Oh, hugely. And business in general. It's ag business and business in general. It's the over regulatory nature of this democratic state that we live in. And, I really do feel going in to politics, especially in the state where you're in the insignificant minority, there's got to be pretty quick efforts to get us back into balance of power that we can in Sacramento, because I can, if you're in the insignificant minority, about all you're able to do is chip away at bad legislation and make it a little less bad,
Or
and
sometimes embarrass them enough to get something done.
yes,
Shannon
yes,
Grove has been successful with a couple things with that.
on the real obviously wicked
Yeah.
issues of pedophiles and all that, she did a great job. But on some of these regulatory issues, we've got to get to a balance of power, and I think that's going to take changing the numbers as fast as we can. And this is where I view kind of a slate of issues, including regulatory relief. Most of these issues are repeal and repealing bad laws. It's California doesn't need new laws. We just need to undo all the bad laws that have been passed. And I think that if we can generate that political climate to where more Republicans or conservative Democrats who are fed up.
Well, there's
get
not many of
elected.
them elected, but
Yeah.
potentially, if some of them got elected, that would shift things.
Yes.
Because conservative Democrats generally are, I don't know, they believe this is a great country.
Yes.
So they're patriotic. They're not in with Gavin Newsom, where he just passed a bill that you can't meme, you can't use AI-generated parody. Okay, well, that won't pass the First Amendment test because the Supreme Court has ruled on parody. The Supreme Court has even said free speech includes your ability to go and lie. So there's no way that this
Okay.
new law is going to pass muster.
Got it.
But both the House and the Assembly passed it, and then Lord Newsom signed it. And for my people that are out of the area, keep in mind, there's a disease here, like a cancer in California, that needs to be addressed. This woke leftist ideology needs to be stopped. They've forgotten the things that we have in common, and I think that being woke is all about dividing you.
Correct.
And they don't allow you to have any diversity of thought.
Mm-hmm. Well, they say they do, but they
Well, no,
really.
they have a diversity of looks, but not thought.
Well, any thought that they don't agree with that's where their diversity ends.
Well, then you don't dare think of it.
Yes.
So if they've so intimidated you that you don't actually, you're afraid to, oh, wait, I can't think that. Do you have free speech anymore?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's no, it's a sad thing. I think the political makeup of California right now is about 50% Democrat, 25 no party preference or independent, however you'd like to say it, and then 25% Republicans. So the appeal needs to be made to the no party preference and whatever conservative Democrats are left out there.
How about we just call them sane Democrats?
I think that might work. But, if I'm elected, they'll be the first ones I'm seeking out are the sane ones. It'll be a real small group, but I think they're important to identify right away.
They absolutely are important.
Yeah.
And, people don't strictly vote on party lines. So I don't see it as quite as bad. Steve Hilton talked about this recently, and he said that in the last couple of years, essentially, the Republicans have gotten 40% of the vote in pretty much all of the elections.
Consistent, yeah.
So that means we're not completely down. It's 60-40. Well, if more of us would vote, that would take care of that problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not like we're down by 80 points. We're down by 20 points. We just have to actually show up for the game and vote.
Yes, yes. There's a number out there. It's a national number. It says 40 million Christians, evangelical Christians, don't vote.
Yeah.
And, I view the role of being in the assembly as being part statesman, which basically says, listen, we can't, the legislature can't solve all the problems. You've got to get out into the church community. And I think I'm a big, firm believer in the power of prayer, intercessory prayer. And I want to kind of boost that potential out there, and at the same time say, we're really not going to make a difference until you get registered and you start voting. And if we can invigorate that block, I think we can make up that 20%.
Oh, absolutely. Religion and politics has been thought of as the third rail.
Yes.
Meaning, don't touch it. Third rail's the electrified rail. That's where that came from when we used to have trolleys, and the third rail would kill you. And that's kind of what people have thought. We have to discuss politics and religion because that's what shifts culture.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. And that's the realization that I came to after serving in Washington. And so my goal is to change the culture, and I think that we can by the outreach to the right places. And with this enabling legislation for us to do, to kind of reform the culture. It's a long slog. It's going to take work, but we got to get it in motion. I think that's the first thing we do. Even if it takes forever, having it in motion is on our way to solving the problem. And so that's what I'm really anxious about that. Yeah.
I want to go ahead and shift gears a little bit because there's several big issues.
Yeah.
As Assembly, you can only do so much on the economy. Maybe you addressed cutting regulation, so there's a place you can help. But what do we do about homelessness? That one, you can have legislation that potentially could really affect homelessness. And our governor, he's done everything he can to increase homelessness, I think because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think his plan was that every household gets one homeless person. I think that was his plan.
Yeah.
Because we're close.
Yeah.
You can go to the smallest little town. I was in Traver. Barely blink going through Traver. It's a little farm community. There's a post office, a store,
Not much
a
more.
thrift shop, and I think a second store.
Yeah.
And they're all tiny stores.
Yeah.
And I saw homeless. It's everywhere. What do we do?
Well, now for a while, solving the problem was prevented by a court ruling that said that you could not get the homeless off the street unless you had a place to put them.
Okay, but Gavin
That
then
helped.
that helped, but Gavin made it better because he then gave them the right to park or camp on all state property. He doesn't ever mention this.
So
all
on
state
highway easements and things like that, they're still there. Yeah, yeah. Well, that Supreme Court ruling was helpful. I mean, it really was.
Oh, it was. This
It was
is
the beginning of something. And I think when I was talking about this family reunification, it's called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. This was the study that was done that documented broken homes and the effects on people's lives of tragic things that happen in their early life that are not resolved. And just the awareness of it, I think, is really good, but it leads to productive counseling to turn people from victims into overcomers. And so I think getting them off the streets, getting the people that have lost their minds, or we need to some type of mental hospitals again, or something that treats them compassionately. Yeah. I think that's a huge part. But then part of it too is get some folks into rehabilitation and counseling so that they're and then give them that opportunity to get back into life and be productive again.
I agree with that, but California's had a housing first policy.
Correct.
If you have somebody that's on drugs or is crazy or both, and that's a high percentage of the homeless, and you put them in housing, what's going to happen? They're going to trash the
Tear
housing.
the housing up. Yeah. Yeah.
So housing first doesn't work. You have to address their issues and house them.
Yes. And that means they're going to be less than penthouse. If I think some kind of housing can be provided, but they're already available. You go down to the rescue mission and other groups, private sector can take care of a lot of the housing for people that need to dry out and get counseling, get back on their feet. And you're right, that housing first policy is the next thing that needs to go. Mm-hmm. And then you have to shut down on these drug markets that allow people to gather and take drugs in public spaces. You've got to clear that stuff out because that's just breeding ground for the same old thing. And
Well, so let's use that as a transition towards crime. What do we do with crime? Because homeless is connected to crime, but that's not. They're not exclusively responsible for all crime.
no,
There's
they're
other
not.
crime.
Correct. Yeah.
They're generally what they do is petty crime and drug abuse. There's
Yes.
not a whole lot of other bigger crimes.
I think the crime agenda consists of repealing, again, some bad laws. I mean, I love Prop 36. I think it's the proposition on the ballot this November that makes revisions to, doesn't completely wipe out that bad law, but it makes revisions to Prop 47 to make it tougher for smash and grab to occur on retail stores.
It returns accountability would be a good way to put that.
It reestablishes law and order. It's
Yeah.
it's pro victim, as it should be. But I think that we need to repeal that Prop 47, the underlying law, Prop 57 and AB 109, which allows for the early release of prisoners because our prisons are overcrowded. And I think
And
that's
and we haven't built any new ones,
well,
but our
that's the answer to
population's gone
prison
up.
overcrowding, not letting them out.
Yeah.
And
Well, because if you let them out at a third of their sentence, I talked to somebody that works for Madera Friday night. They just convicted somebody of some pretty serious stuff,
yeah,
and he got a third of his sentence.
wow,
Like it got negotiated down to a third of his sentence right away.
yeah.
Now, with good time served and things like that, he might be out. It's been a few days. He might be out already. That's how crazy we are in California.
Well, it's pro-victim and pro-offender,
And it should
pro-criminal.
and it should be pro victim.
And it's being done in the name of social justice, which is a misapplication of equality. And the term, again, it's the equity issue where everybody's got to be treated the same, or, that kind of policy is not good for the criminal or the victim or society, period. And I think that's the lesson we've learned. So my thing is just start reversing some of this stuff and make the case for it. And, it won't get a lick of attention from the current legislature right now, but that's why you have ballot initiatives and you go to the people in the state, and say, I'm sorry, but this has to happen. And I think there's still a good enough amount of people in this state who will listen to you. They haven't all left yet, all the right ones.
No, not all of them. I went to your debate with your opponent,
Uh-huh.
and something interesting happened. Actually, two things, but I think I'm only going to talk about one. You 3 different times during that debate said, I'm the only candidate that has endorsed President Trump. And I can't find out whether your opponent has actually endorsed President Trump, but if he's not, where does that leave things? Now, I think he's generally a pretty nice guy, smart guy, young guy. But that one left this huge question mark in my mind when you said it 3 times and he didn't respond.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't speak for my opponent. I will say, too, that even as equally important is that I'm endorsed by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Committee, because I will not raise taxes, and I have a history of not raising taxes. And
that is his other Achilles heel, is that he was for a local measure that I was very much against.
Yeah, yeah. But I you'd have to ask him where he stands with Trump, and I think Trump has his faults, but by golly, the amazing stuff that he's withstood, he's earned the right to be our nominee, and he's earned the right to be president for being shot at twice or almost, and all these lawsuits that
Lawfare
that will all be struck down when they're appealed after the election. It takes time to appeal a decision. They'll all be struck down. Maybe one in Florida, but
I don't even think that one.
Yeah.
I was interviewed by Fox News National. I got instead about 3 seconds. So some of you might remember this very brief saying. I said, "Really? Can you say Banana Republic?" About 1 million people have watched me say that because it was on Maria Bartiromo and Fox Business and their website. But I had a great
Banana
2-minute
Republic.
I had a great 2-minute interview, and I got, "Can you say Banana Republic?"
Well, you got your point across in those few short words.
Yes, I did.
You said it all, which is a skill, by the way. But yeah, and I can't answer for why that's the case. But
Well, enough about your opponent. Top 3 issues for you.
I think this cultural reform agenda that I've got, folded into a 7 to 10 point plan to begin to change, build support so that we can do the things we want to do. Because right now you can't. Until you change that voter dynamic in the legislature, you can talk about what your priorities are, but you're not going to get them. And so I really want to activate that plan, and then begin to work with the legislature in a bipartisan way. In probably the cultural reform agenda, I think will, because it's a popular. Childhood trauma is a popular issue. But then I think it would be working to reform and rebuild and strengthen the Republican Party so that we can begin to increase registration again. And then working to try to change the mindset of the Californians along the way. I think you have to work in the legislature, in the party, and with the people of California in general, in all those 3 ways, to change the balance of power as fast as possible. So what I will do, too, is introduce right away a project that will get more water through the Delta. Maybe 2 that are simple. John Duarte's introduced one that would use a Folsom Canal that already exists to get water closer to south of the Delta.
People need to realize the only way to fix the water issues in most states is a combo of federal and state.
Yes.
And what percentage that is state to state, but it's 60-40 was what I've been told by a bunch of people in this state.
Yes.
So you have to work outside of your legislative branch and work with the higher office.
Yes, exactly. And that's engaging the folks in D.C., which, they all know me. I mean, they know those contacts are easier to make. And we have people like John Duarte, Tom McClintock, who are, excellent members of Congress that are anxious to work on these issues and get them resolved. So we're lucky that we have good, and Vince. I don't want to leave anybody out, but we had the Republicans we do have, members of Congress from California are great.
Valadeo, though he's not overlapping your district,
right?
But he's farming, and
Riley.
I'm very hopeful that Jim Costa's position, I believe that's district, is that 20 or 21? That's 20.
Yeah, lose track.
I'm hoping that Michael Maher wins that, and he seems to have all the momentum, so I'm hopeful that Michael Maher will make it there.
Michael Maher, he would be a huge addition to the cloud of California.
And then the whole valley would be red as far as congressional districts.
Again.
Yes.
Yeah. We have Kevin Kiley, who's to the north a bit, and Doug LaMaffa, clear up at the top of the state. So the ones we have are fantastic, and they're all about farming and water, and so that will help a lot, I think. And I can work with them, and I know their territory. I know their domain back there. So I think that helps at the state level as well.
I do think that will help. We're going to go ahead and take our last break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. When we come back, I want to focus on what you're hopeful and what solutions there are. So that's the last 10 minutes. I am going to briefly talk about this and invite you to it, though.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. As my radio listeners know, my podcast people already know because of the way that the show runs, we try to focus on hope and solutions. And I think one of the ways to find hope and solutions is to meet like-minded people and to begin to understand what our civic responsibilities are. So I'm going to invite you to this event. I know you're busy, and it's a busy season. It's called the Great American Freedom Revival. It's October 19th.
Okay.
And we have a couple speakers that I'm very hopeful about, very enthusiastic about. Rick Green from Wall Builders. They're about connecting the Constitution, early American history, and Christianity. I believe that's one of the places where if we find those original principles, that we can begin to be the country we used to be. Now, with that being said, that has nothing to do with color. By the way, our other speaker happens to have a much darker skin tone than me, but I don't think that's what's important about her. What's important about her is that she grew up in welfare. She was then a welfare mom. She had multiple abortions. Then she found Christ. She changed her life, and now she's trying to change her community and change inner cities. Star Parker is just kind of an amazing woman. So, George, I hope I see you there, but I understand with the crazy schedule, you might already be booked.
I don't know. I don't know what's on deck for October 19th, but this is from 1 to 5. I'm in. I met Rick Green, had a chance to spend some time with him.
He's pretty cool.
He's a great guy. Love the guy. And Star Parker has been around with her story for a long time. I think even back when I was in Congress.
I think so,
earlier.
because I watched an interview of her on Huckabee not too long ago. And they made reference to Sarah, now governor of Arkansas.
Yes.
And Sarah was a teenager, a young teenager then, in middle school. So
at that time,
Star knew the Huckabees at that time and was engaged. So that's quite some time. And I don't know exactly how old Sarah is, but more than 20 years.
This looks like a wonderful revival. There's no way I could miss this, really. But you've got the perfect guest for this thing. I think that's we need more. I tell people too, and I'm gonna spend a lot of time going to churches that'll have me, and talk about how the tough road that I've got. I'm going up there to run up against a brick wall, and the only thing that can really break that wall down is prayer cover before you're going in. And I think the case is made in intercession, in the prayer closet, and in the prayer group. I really do. And until we get more people participating that way, we've all got our gifts as Christians, but until we get more people participating that way, I just say the more we get people participating that way, the quicker the reform happens. I think God is anxious to make these changes. He just
well, He wants the best for us.
He certainly does, and I think if we can get more people communicating that way, appropriating these good things through prayer and such, I think we can break through that wall. It gives you hope that a state as bad as California could actually be turned around.
I truly believe that California can be turned around, but I think if it's going to happen, the heart of California, the Central Valley, is what's going to do it.
Yeah.
We've got enough population base that we can begin to shift things. We're often known as the Bible Belt of California.
Yes.
So's Riverside. So apparently California's big enough it needs 2 Bible belts.
We'll take all we can get.
I think we need all we can get, yeah.
Orange County used to be that way too, but it's changing, unfortunately. But
yes, but some of them are waking up. Have you been paying attention to what's happening in Huntington Beach? Huntington Beach has decided that they're not going to listen to the state on election integrity. And they said, you're going to have voter ID. Now, the state is suing them, but voter ID is something that just protects all of us. If somebody comes in and cheats, then my vote, my privilege of being able to vote for who I want is taken away if they vote differently. Voter ID just makes sense.
Yeah, it really does. It's that chain of custody that is being stretched and broken, I think, by ballot harvesting and legally, by law, that's being stretched and broken. And the closer you can get to, proving voter, that you're a voter, which I think in many cases, unless tech is built to the best way to do that is to show up the poll with your ID or having had that confirmed already with your license plate to prove who you are.
I show up with my mail-in ballot and vote in person. This year I'm going to vote early. I'm going to go down to my register of voters office and vote in person. but I come with my mail-in ballot, and I always insist that they look at my ID, and they're like, I can't ask. And I said, I didn't ask you. I was showing you my ID because it's the right thing to do. And I always tell them that.
I like that. Yeah. And I don't see the problem. I think if people under the law, they with ballot harvesting and all these things, they've just made it too easy in some ways for people to vote, but it leaves them subject to bad influences. And we've got to have the voter integrity. There's just no question about it.
Well, it's also no voter ID. If later today, and I am not saying I'm going to do this, but if I was inclined, I could sign up to vote, multiple different names, just make it up, make an address, and I bet you within an hour I could come up with, I'm fairly slow on the computer, say 5 different IDs. And I would of different voter profiles, and they would send me ballots. If I can do that, what if somebody's good on the internet, or what if somebody's actually crooked?
Well, if we weren't live, I'd propose that. I said, let's try it, Eric, and expose this.
They did that in, was it Minnesota? Somebody did that, and then the Secretary of State of that state nailed them. I think it's Minnesota. It's one of those Great Lakes states, but don't hold me. It might be Michigan.
Okay, yeah.
It's been a while since I read that article.
Yeah. And the state cracked down on him. Huh?
Straight cracked down, and she reported she was going to do it beforehand.
Oh, okay.
Like she told everybody, this is what I'm doing and this is why, and I'm not going to vote. But I'm going to get the...
But I'm going to get the ballots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, as proof. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're down to like just a little over 2 minutes. Final thoughts.
I appreciate being on the air with you and being able to make my case to the people of the valley and the mountains. Again, I'm all to introducing water projects and fixing the insurance problems. They would be my top legislative priorities. I'm getting back into politics, not because I miss being in office, but a real passion to reform the state, and I think I've got answers on how to actually do that. And I want the opportunity to go back in and try it. And I have the energy, and my people can learn more about my campaign on my website, which is george2024.com. Pretty simple. And you can contribute to my campaign on there, which is all part of getting elected to office. I will not raise your taxes. I've been endorsed by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, and would appreciate the support of the people as I run this gauntlet.
Well, I appreciate you jumping back in. I appreciate the fact that you realized that politics wasn't most important and you got out and you took care of your son. I hope he appreciates that.
He does. He turned out good despite all my mistakes, but
everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah. Boy, I'll tell you, single parents have it tough. I will say this, Eric, right now. And I can see us, if I had my wife with me during the time of important decisions where there would have been much better decisions made. But, single parents can do it. It's just harder,
Yeah.
It can be done. But who, it's harder. And it's much better with 2 parents in the family.
I think that men and women just have a different perspective, but they're complementary in that. And they often have a little...
It's well-rounded.
That's exactly right. Well, my friend, we are basically out of time today. I thank you for this time, and I wish you the best of luck.
Eric, thank you very much. So good to be here. Hope this is for you.
I hope so. This is Eric Rollins, Constitutionalist here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town.